Hi everybody. Today I am making a video to answer a viewer question. I received this message on my Facebook page. It is from a fellow teacher. Her name is Min. Hi Min. And Min sent me a message recently. She says, "Hi EE, I'm a piano teacher in Tennessee and I've been following you for a while now. Is it okay if I ask you a few questions to learn some from your experience? I'm deciding between implementing ABRSM or RCM in my studio." I actually know both programs. I did ABRSM growing up in Singapore, and I've submitted a student twice for the RCM. I'm just trying to decide which is more recognized in the US. And I do know ABRSM is more widely used in the West Coast than anywhere else in the US. So I'm curious why you choose to do RCM for your students, or do you do both? I'm slightly leaning towards ABRSM because I have students who are not as comfortable memorizing music. Also, the oral aspect is easier to prepare for the teacher since there are materials available, whereas RCM relies on their own digital platform where the teacher has no control over. Also, the fact that RCM requires more pieces than ABRSM. But I don't want to make the wrong choice and prepare them for the ABRSM only to have them spend a lot of money and not have the recognition in the US. We can do this over Facebook or YouTube if you like. All right, so because I had answered to her that perhaps it's easier if I do a video so then other teachers can also watch the video should they have similar questions. So that's why she said whichever platform I choose to do it will be fine. All right, first of all, I just want to say, Min, it sounds like you are a very dedicated teacher, and the fact that you're trying to find out more about each of the two programs before you register your student and you're trying to research, it just shows how committed you are as a teacher. So your students are very lucky to have you. Okay, so there are quite a few key issues that I think we can address. So I think it may make this video just a little bit too long. So we'll probably just answer them in general terms first today. And then perhaps each week I can do a video on a more detailed aspect about each of the programs. So the short answer is I do both. I actually do more than both of those two programs. So I also have students do a very well-known program in California. It's called the MTAC Certificate of Merit. MTAC is for Music Teachers Association of California. So that's a very big organization in California, and they run their own assessment program called the Certificate of Merit. So right now, I have students that do the RCM, which is the Royal Conservatory of Music, and that comes from Canada, in case anybody doesn't know. I have students that do the Certificate of Merit. I have students that do the ABRSM. The ABRSM is the Associated Board of the Royal Schools of Music, and that's a British-based exam program. So, for those of you that don't know, I was born in Taiwan, but I grew up in New Zealand. I went to school in New Zealand. So I myself went through the ABRSM program as a student. And then I moved to the States, and I lived in the States for many, many years. And last year I moved back to New Zealand. So I've definitely traveled quite a bit and lived in many different places. So when I first moved to the States, I was in New York. So in New York, I had students do the ABRSM and NYSSMA, which stands for New York State School Music Association, I think, and Guild auditions, the National Piano Guild. Then I moved to California, and I continued to do the Guild auditions, and I found out about the Certificate of Merit, so I had students do that. And about 2 years after I moved to California, I believe, it was roughly that time, the RCM started to become introduced. So the RCM has not been in the States for that long. Obviously, it's been in Canada forever. But it was only introduced in the States relatively recently. So, and it has gone through a number of name changes. When it was first introduced in the States, it was called the Carnegie Hall Achievement Program. and then they changed the name. They took the Carnegie Hall name out. So now I believe it's just called the RCM certificate program. Okay, so anyways, so to answer your question, I guess in a more general term, the answer is I don't just do one program. So why do I choose one program for a student and a different program for another student? Well, the ABRSM program is extremely famous, let's just say, right, in Britain and all Commonwealth countries, including New Zealand, Australia, Singapore, and many Asian countries. It is definitely more recognized worldwide. It's not as recognized in the US, I don't believe. I think because they don't really market themselves. The RCM, since it was first introduced in the US, has been marketing themselves extensively. Like I said, they went through a couple name changes, but they would have a big booth in pretty much every music teacher convention or conference. So they heavily advertise themselves. So now I do believe, and this is a very subjective answer, that the RCM, in terms of recognition, is more well known in the United States. But if you go like to New Zealand or Australia or back to Singapore or Hong Kong or some Asian countries, they would not know what RCM is. So in terms of international recognition, the ABRSM obviously has a very long history as well. It comes from England. So that's to do with the recognition side. Now, in terms of which program is better or not as good, right? Again, this is a very subjective answer. I don't think the word better is the right word. I think every program has its merit and every program has its flaws. I certainly don't think there's the one perfect program that's the best. So, and I think that you don't need to necessarily worry too much about preparing them for the wrong program. There really is no such thing as the wrong program. I think the student can learn, right, from doing any program, because as I said, they all have their own merits. And one thing to remember is you don't have to just stick to the same program. So you could have the student do RCM level 2, and the next year they could try a different program for level 3. So it's certainly possible to switch program, right? And then find out which one is the best fit. Now, since COVID, most exams now have online options. So I believe the RCM, or I'm sure the RCM now offers in-person exams as well as online exams. And so I'm pretty sure the ABRSM do that as well. I'm not as familiar anymore with the ABRSM. I'm starting to re-familiarize myself with it since I moved back to New Zealand. But I know that the ABRSM offers recorded exams as well, and in person. So everybody has sort of taken into consideration that some people still prefer the in-person experience and some people just find the online exam more convenient. So, and I think cost-wise they are rather similar. So I don't think there is such a thing as preparing them for the wrong exam. So I don't think you need to worry about that. But if you're looking for recognition, right now in the US, RCM, I believe, is more recognized. So that's the short question. Now, there was another aspect I want to address, and I think you were saying that the RCM relies on their own digital platform and the teacher has no control over. That is actually not true at all. So the RCM offers a lot of digital reference online. So the teacher and the student can purchase, I think these subscriptions with online access to a lot of practice material. But you certainly don't need to go through that route. They have physical books that you can purchase. And even if you don't have those physical books, the syllabus outlines exactly what questions are covered in each level, such as interval, clapping of rhythms. So you do not need to rely on those digital platforms. They are helpful, but they are not necessary. You do not have to purchase the subscription in order to do the exam. So I just want to make sure, make that clarification. Memory. Yes, in terms of memory, it is true that the RCM penalizes people for not memorizing. They award extra points for memory. I believe up to level 8 or so, and they deduct point if you don't memorize. The ABRSM does not specifically say that memory is required, right? But we all know that for a very secure performance, memory is almost necessary. It's almost an automatic byproduct. So, but of course, if you want to look for black and white print, whether it says memory is compulsory or not, ABRSM does not say that. So that is more or less true. So if the student is just never gonna memorize their music, I guess then they will probably not do as well in RCM, right? Although, as I always say, you never know until you try something. So if the student was never asked to do something, they will never challenge themselves to try. So, if the teacher says, okay, this year, let's try something different. So let's try really hard to memorize. And if they don't end up memorizing, well, they lose, if it's up to level 8, they lose the 2 points per each repertoire piece, but it's not going to make them not pass the test just because they didn't memorize. So it's not like you just will not even pass the test. Now, at the diploma level, the RCM makes it quite clear that it is compulsory. So you will not pass the test if you don't memorize. That is true. But for average grade students that are just going through the, up to say level 10 or so, or the grade 8 in ABRSM, it's not like if they didn't memorize, they will for sure fail. So don't be afraid of just not passing the test if they didn't memorize. What else was in your question? The memory we addressed, the ear training we addressed. So, the number of pieces. Yes, you mentioned the RCM requires more pieces than the ABRSM. Yes, that is true. So the RCM divides into repertoire pieces and A2 pieces. So, typically it depends on what level you're doing. You would have 3 or 4 repertoire pieces and then 2 A2 pieces, 1 to 2 A2 pieces. So overall, there are more pieces required than the ABRSM. But again, is that a bad thing? I think it's actually a good thing because it depends on what the goal of the student is. Are they just preparing the exam just to get a piece of paper that says they are level 3 or grade 3? That should not be the goal, right? The goal should be to learn a variety of pieces in different styles. So although the RCM requires more pieces, the A2 pieces are relatively short, especially in the early levels, they're 1 to 2 pages. And the A2 pieces do not need to be memorized. So you can absolutely use the music, and it does not say, right, whether you're going to be penalized or not. Although we all know that a secure performance is usually memorized, so you'll probably get a slightly higher mark, right? Even though it doesn't really officially say that memory will be awarded, marks will be awarded for memory. So, but again, I think having the more pieces is a good thing ultimately for the student, so that they don't just play the same 3 or 4 pieces just for the purpose of passing the exam. So in my opinion, it is a good thing that it has more pieces required. Like I said, I think I can definitely do more videos about the sort of in more detail about each of these 2 programs. But I do want to say that one thing I love about the RCM program is how extensive the choices are. So for each level, if you look at the syllabus, the student and the teacher, you have such a big selection of choices. The ABRSM, well, they have a book, right? So in each list, there's probably 3 pieces. And then there are additional pieces that you can use instead of the ones that is published. But it's a very short little list. The RCM list is so extensive, and that is the one big benefit that I feel that the RCM, the advantage of RCM over ABRSM is that you just have such a big list of pieces to choose from. Surely there's one that suits the particular student. And also the RCM, well, the ABRSM now as well, both programs, they do, right? They do support contemporary composers. There's a big percentage of music that is by living composers. So I do applaud them for including, and they're very inclusive, right? Composers from, different countries and different time periods. So the choice of repertoire is amazing. But in particular, in that respect, the RCM wins hands down, for sure, right? The choice of repertoire and how extensive that list is. All right. So, anyways, Min, I am sorry this video took a little longer to come out, but I just want to make sure that you know that I haven't forgotten about you. So I'm just going to post this one, and then I'll try and make more videos about the benefits of each of these two programs. Okay, so I hope I more or less answered your question, but I guess in very general terms. All right, see you next time.